Hello and welcome to Bridgewood Online. I'm Pastor Sean, and thank you for joining with me today. Pastor Kurt, our lead pastor, is coming in just a moment to continue our series entitled The Exodus. And if you've missed any of these messages in this series, you are going to want to go back and take a look at those. So whether on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel, go back, take a look at those, because we are talking all about finding freedom in our lives. Before he comes, let me give you a couple things that are going on around here for you and your family. Ladies, the Destiny Conference is this weekend. And so you can hop on and you can register for your seat, for your sister's seat, for your mom's seat at the Destiny Conference. There is so much packed into these 2 days that you are going to want to be there. And so register today and get to the Destiny Conference this weekend. And then many of you have heard Pastor Grant Williams speak on a Sunday or have been part of one of his classes on a Wednesday. He is starting a community Bible study here on Tuesday nights. And so if you want to hear about what's next and how God is lining up his return, then you are going to want to come on Tuesday nights. And so right here at Bridgewood Church, the Clarkson campus, information is right there on the screen. And then if you play an instrument or you love to worship and sing, or you're really good around technology and you love production, then the worship on-ramp is for you. We need more volunteers at our campuses to help us get this word out to the community and the world around us. And so we need you to be a part of that worship on-ramp. Well, I know that Pastor Kurt has a great word for us today. If you've missed anything, you can always hit bridgewoodchurch.com/info to find out everything that's going on around here for you and your family. Well, here is Pastor Kurt, lead pastor of Bridgewood Church.
Also, let me welcome those that are watching online. Come on, Clarkson, help us start off. Welcome those that are here today. And so I know they're joining with us, tuning in right now, and I'm excited about it. All right, how many of you own a hairdryer? Let me see your hand. Come on. This is confession time. Own a hairdryer. This is my wife's hairdryer that blows the circuits in our upstairs. I'm not kidding. Like, this thing is so powerful, and there must be something wrong with my electric that when she plugs this in, stuff doesn't work or it blows. So she has a cord that runs out of the bathroom into another plug to power this thing, which is like a small jet engine. And, these things are pretty cool. I've never really used a hairdryer ever in my life, but how many of you have used a hairdryer for something other than drying your hair? Okay, see, look at that. This is like everybody's raising their hand. There's some amazing things you could do with this thing. Like, you could take off labels and tags with a hairdryer. How many of you knew that? A few of you did. Yeah, go home and try it. It works. Especially if you have a turbo one. Just put it on the hurricane setting, and it peels right off every time. Do you know that if you bake a cake and you put icing on it and then you hit it with a hairdryer, it puts a gloss on it? How many of you knew that? Okay, a few of you knew that. Okay, I'm channeling my inner cook that you can do that. Don't use the hurricane setting or the cake will fly off the table. And if you're like my son, I won't tell you which one, but he does have blonde hair. How many of you use this for a heater in the morning? on cold winter days. I mean, there are times we'd go in there and be like, what is he doing in there? And he's just sitting there with it, like keeping him warm, And like, we do have heat, we're not that bad off. But this is so cool. Like, if you hit the button and it comes, like, it's not working. I need a plug, okay? I need a plug. This is a sermon illustration, everybody. This is a sermon illustration. So, and once you plug it in, well, this is a bad sermon illustration. I guess that doesn't work. Let's try this one right here. Look at that, everybody. I think we blew the circuits here, too. Like, just listen to that right there. And if you're like the weatherman, it's like, the media team is saying, don't do that. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but this thing is absolutely useless for anything unless it's plugged in. Would you agree with me? Now, I don't know how this works. I bet you it's pretty complex on the inside, all of the parts that make this thing work and be as powerful as it is. And I just know that when you plug this thing in, it can accomplish the use for which it's intended to do. Now, for you and I believe that we're way more complex than a hairdryer. You with me? Like, God knit us together in our mother's womb. Like, God designed us. Like, you and I have DNA that is only specific to us. But I do know this, that God designed us and wired us not to power ourselves. That there was no way that He expected us to do what He wants us to do here on this earth by powering ourselves, but that we would find a source of power, which is Him, that once we plug into, not only does our life become useful for so many things, but how many of you know it's a source that is so far greater than you and I that we can accomplish anything? Would you agree with me? So, like, we're living, and that's what we're going to talk about today in this story, is about being plugged into God so that He can accomplish the use and the purpose that He has for our life. But if you and I try to do it on our own, if you and I try to power ourselves, it's never going to work, and we're never going to be what God intended us to be. So why don't you grab your Bible with me? That's what we're talking about today, because what we're going to see in our story is that Moses is telling God no over and over and over again. How many of you have ever said no to God? More than once. Okay, then this message is going to be right there for all of us today. Because I've been there myself where God has asked me to do something. God has said, I want you to do this, and I've just said no. And that no was for a lot of reasons. And then no over and over and over again. And that's exactly where we find Moses. This is where Moses is. And maybe this is where you find yourself today. And here's what my prayer is. Here's how I've been praying all week. Here's how I prayed for us this morning. God, would you make room in all of our hearts today to speak to us and to challenge us and to convince us that your way is better than our way? Because a lot of times the reason we say no is because we would rather do it our way than God's way. But my prayer is that, God, would you help us to see that your way is better than our way. And so here's where we left off last week. All right, let me just catch you up real quick. Jesus is on fire in the middle of a bush in the desert. And Moses is in the desert. He's been living in the desert for 40 years as a shepherd, and he is having a conversation with Jesus, who is on fire in the middle of the desert. And the first thing that Jesus said to him was, Moses, take off your sandals. This is holy ground. And we talked about that in one of the messages on how incredible of a moment that was, where God was inviting him to bring the dirtiest part of him to encounter the holiest part of God, and how he changes us when we do that. But then the second thing that Jesus speaks to him from this burning bush is what we talked about last week. He says, I want you to go. I've got an assignment for you. I want you to go to Pharaoh, and I want you to tell him to let my people go. And remember, Moses asked 2 questions. We said last week, one of them is the wrong question to ask when Jesus is speaking to you. One of them is the right question. The wrong question was, who am I? Because when God said, I want you to do this, Moses said, well, who am I? Like doubting God, like doubting that God could use him. Like, who am I to just tell Pharaoh, let the people go? And that's what we often do. We say that same question. God, who am I? I don't have any abilities. I don't have any talents. And that's the wrong question. The right question is the next question he asked, which is, who are you? And God said, I am. Remember? God said, I am. And there, Moses realizes that if God is I am, that means God is saying, I am everything that you need, and I can do anything that I want to do, and I can even use you to do this miraculous thing. That's the right question to ask. And so we looked at that and we said, wow, that's powerful. So you would think that after all of that, how many of you would think Moses gets it now? Like he's ready to surrender. He's ready to say to God, God, I'm all in. Let's do this thing. Here we go. But there's still a problem because Moses is still saying no. And he's hung up with a problem that will keep you and me from being plugged into God. So let's begin our story this morning. If you have your Bibles, Exodus chapter 4. Verse 1. Exodus 4, verse 1. Notice what it said. But Moses protested. Remember, we said this is a peaceful protest. But he's protesting, and he says, what if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say the Lord never appeared to you? I want you to get this, because this is the moment that we start giving God the list of excuses. This is the moment when no just isn't working anymore, so now you've got to clarify the no. You've got to say no because of this, and we just start this big long list of excuses. And I want you to notice his excuse, because it's a problem that we have today, and it was a problem thousands of years ago. Notice what it says, and I want you to repeat this with me. I want you to repeat the highlighted word there. He said, what if they, and then he says it a second time, what if, well, who's they? They is everybody else, right? Now, how many of you are glad we've made a lot of progress in 3,000 years? Because isn't that the excuse? Here's Moses. Think about this. He's about to tell God no because of what other people think. He's about to tell God, I am not going to be used by you. I'm not plugging into your power. You're not going to use me because I'm worried about they. I'm worried about what they think. And that is an excuse that we are living with in our culture today. Listen, this is an excuse-driven culture that we're living in. Everybody has an excuse. Everybody is driven by this idea that I can't do something because of this, and we know what all those excuses are. That's why one of the core values that I love the most here at Bridgewood is a core value that we have that says, own it. Don't push it off on someone else. Don't make an excuse. You and I have to own it. We have to step up and say, this is my responsibility. This is my response. I'm not worried about that. And could you imagine? Imagine how God feels. God's like, Moses, like you're worried about them? I'm on fire in the middle of the bush? What about me? Like, are you worried about what I think? But we're always worried about what other people think. And here's the deal. Here's why this is such a big deal. Because many people will not take their next step because they're worried about what other people think. So many people are paralyzed in their journey to freedom because they're worried about if I get too excited about God, what are they going to think? You know what? If I really start reading my Bible and bringing my Bible to work or bringing my Bible to school, what is everybody going to think? You know, if I have to make some changes in my life and I can't go everywhere everyone else goes and I can't talk the way that everyone else talks, what are they going to think? And all of those excuses over and over and over again. But now you have to think 3,000 years ahead to today. This is now magnified 1,000 times over, everybody, because of social media. Right? No social media 3,000 years ago. Social media today. And so, man, you get a 24/7, any second of the day idea about what everybody thinks. How many of you know people are mean on Facebook? And Twitter is just a dumpster fire. Like, that thing's just messed up. And so everybody's worried about it. Everybody's like, oh, you know, was this going to... And so it keeps them from plugging into God and saying, God, yes, I want to be used by you. I'm so proud of our students. And when you see any of our students around this past Wednesday, they gathered in their schools all over, Oxford, Holly, Brandon, Clarkston, Lake Orion, and they stood around their flagpoles. Here's a few pictures of them. Unashamed to say we're followers of God. We don't care what everybody thinks, but we're going to pray for our school. We're going to pray for revival, and we're going to pray. This is what's going to take everybody in order for us to plug into God. To stop worrying about they and start worrying more about what God says and about what God thinks, because we allow people allow people to define them. And only God defines us. People's opinions don't define you. People's opinions shouldn't sway you one way or the other. We've got to grow beyond our feelings into faith as a follower of Jesus so that we're not defined by what culture says or what our friends say or even people that are close to us that don't agree with us, what they say. Otherwise, we're not going to get plugged into the power that God has for our life. So look at verse 2. Then the Lord asked him, what is in your hand? A shepherd's staff, Moses replied. I love reading the Bible as if I'm experiencing it in real time, because I could see Moses kind of replying back to God like a shepherd's staff. Like, what does that have to do with what I'm talking about? Because notice God, again, doesn't answer his question. He says, what if they? What if they? God doesn't even answer the question. He just goes, what's in your hand? And Moses is like, a shepherd's staff? Like, what does this have to do with anything that I just said? And I love this because in this moment, God is going to show him something that Moses doesn't see. And many times, we don't see it either. So God says to him, what's in your hand? And Moses is about to push back against God. He's thinking to himself, this makes no sense at all. And God is going to show him that there is power in your hand. There is power to plug in right there in your hand. And it's not in a place, and it's not in a person, but it's personal. He's saying, what's in your hand? God is asking all of us today, what is in your hand? What is in your hand? And then look at verse number 3. Here's what he says. He says, throw it down on the ground. And the Lord told him, so Moses threw the staff and it turned into a snake. And then Moses jumped back. So what's going on here? Is like God just teaching Moses a trick? Or is God really trying to communicate something that I believe he's trying to communicate to you and I as well? Because I don't think he's just asking Moses, what's in your hand, Moses? I believe he's asking us the same question. What's in your hand? And he says, throw it on the ground. He throws it on the ground, and it turns into a snake, and Moses jumps back. Now, I think a snake, any good snake, is a dead snake. Anybody agree with me? I don't like snakes. A good snake is a dead snake, but he throws it on the ground, and it turns into a snake. Now, get this. It could have turned into anything, but it turns into a snake. Why did it turn into a snake? Up to this point in Scripture, the only other time that a snake is referred to or used is in Genesis 3, when the serpent, Satan, disguises himself as a servant to deceive Adam and Eve. That's the only context at this point in the Bible that Moses has about a snake. And Moses, you got to remember this, he's a desert man. He's an outdoor guy. He's lived in the desert for 40 years. And Moses, how many of you would agree, knows the difference between a poisonous snake and a non-poisonous snake? Okay, this is a poisonous snake. You say, well, how do you know that? Because Moses jumped back. Moses would have never jumped back if it wasn't a poisonous snake. The reason he jumped back was because his staff, that's now a snake in front of them, is a poisonous snake that could kill him. And here's what I believe God was saying, and dial in with me right now, okay? Here's what I believe God was saying to Moses. You're about to step into a spiritual battle. You're about to step into a spiritual battle. He's telling Moses right here in this moment, there's a spiritual battle just like there was in Genesis 3. And if you're worried about what everyone else thinks and you're not plugged into me, you're going to get deceived. Your life's going to get overcome. But if you're plugged into me, you're going to be okay. Even with this poisonous snake here, you're going to be okay as long as you're plugged into me. We're living in a time right now where we're all stepping into a spiritual battle. There's a spiritual battle going on all around us right now, even as I speak. And I think God's helping us to understand this is why you need to be plugged into me. Because if you're not plugged into me, you're going to worry about what everyone else thinks. And if you're worried about what everyone else thinks, you're going to get deceived today. You're going to get overcome by the enemy. You're going to find yourself in bondage, addiction, destruction so fast in your life. But he's saying, I want you to know that you can step into this spiritual battle. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to jump back. You just need to trust me. You're going to be okay as long as you're plugged into me. Because watch what he says. Then the Lord told him, reach down and grab it by its tail. So Moses reached out and grabbed it, and it turned back into a shepherd's staff in his hand. Okay, now you don't have to be a desert person or live in the desert to know you don't grab a snake by the tail. Okay, and then especially a poisonous one. So you grab a snake by the back of its head so that you have a firm grip on which direction that snake can turn, spit at you, bite you, or anything. But man, you grab it by the tail, that thing's going to swing around and it's going to bite you. But God said, Moses, reach down and grab that by the tail. How many of you believe this was a step of faith for Moses? Okay, people say all the time, following God it's easy. No, it's not. Nobody said it was easy. It requires incredible faith. It requires incredible courage at times to do what God tells you to do. I'm sure for Moses, he's thinking to himself, this is a poisonous snake. If I reach down and grab it by the tail, I'm going to die. But it's a step of faith because I got to either trust God or trust myself. And so what does he do? He reaches down exactly like God said, grabs it by the tail, boom, it turns back into a staff. And here's what God is saying. God is saying, Moses, not only are you stepping into a spiritual battle, but I have given you authority over the enemy in any battle that you face. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to jump back. All you need to do is plug into me and trust me that what I tell you to do and the steps that I tell you to take, you're going to be okay, even when you think you're going to die, even when you think this battle is bigger than you, even when you don't understand what God is doing. He's saying, trust me. Trust me. Moses, I've given you authority over everything. I love this because right here in this story, we're looking at the fact that he has authority. Luke chapter 10, Jesus said these words in Luke chapter 10. He said, I have given you authority. He's talking to his followers over the power of the enemy, and you can walk among snakes and scorpions and crush them. Was he talking about like real snakes and scorpions? No, he was referring to the spiritual aspect of this. He was saying, I've given you power and authority over the enemy. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be worried. Just step in the power that I give you. He told Moses the same thing. I believe he's telling you and I the same thing. He's going, you can step into this. But he wasn't done with Moses. So he said, Moses, stick your hand in your cloak. I'm going to show you another one. Now, I imagine Moses out in the desert in like an Obi-Wan Kenobi robe, like with the hood and the whole 9 yards. And he's like, stick your hand in your cloak. So Moses sticks his hand in his cloak, and then he pulls it out. And when he took it out, his hand was as white as snow with a severe skin disease. Basically, he stuck his hand in, and then when he pulled it out, he had leprosy. Leprosy is a deadly disease, everybody. Leprosy will kill you. Now, when he pulls his hand back out, how many of you think at that moment Moses is frustrated? Moses is confused? Moses might even be upset at God, like, God, I just did what you asked me to do, and now I could die. I don't understand this. I don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand why you don't make sense in this moment. Has anybody ever been in those moments where God doesn't make sense? Where you said, God, I trusted you. I did what you wanted to do. Why am I experiencing pain and hurt in my life? I don't get this, God. And you know what often people do? This is the point where they unplug from God and they run away. They get frustrated at God. They get angry at God. They realize I can't figure God out, so I'm out of here. And this is where people go, here's what I'm saying. Stay plugged into God in this moment. Because then God tells Moses, put your hand back in your cloak. And when he did it, verse number 7, he pulls it back out and it was as healthy as the rest of his body. What is God saying? What is God doing? God is saying to him, Moses, you're going to face situations in your life that are going to be painful, that are going to hurt you. You're going to face situations in your life that you're not going to understand, that you're even going to be frustrated with. But I want you to know I'm a healer. And not only can I heal you, but I can use the very thing that hurt you. I can use the very pain that you went through. I can use that in your life to accomplish something absolutely incredible if you trust me. And listen, somebody needs to hear this today, whether you're online or you're right here in this live experience. God can heal you of anxiety. God can heal you of depression. God can heal you from addiction. God can lift you out of guilt and shame. He's a healer, and he can use what was intended to hurt you to help you to be everything that he asked you to be. How many of you believe that today? Now, those are pretty cool, right? Like, if you do any of those tricks at a party today, you got a crowd. How many of you would think, like Moses gets it now? Now Moses is ready to sing, I surrender all. He's already on his knees going, Lord, I'm all in. Nope. Look at verse 10. But Moses pleaded with the Lord. Oh, Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never have been. Here comes some more excuses. I'm not now, even though you have spoken to me. I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. A lot of people, scholars, commentators, believe that Moses stuttered, had a stuttering issue. And so, after he said no, and then no, and then no, and then excuses, and then no, and now more excuses, it's God, I stutter. I get tongue-tied. I'm not a good public speaker. I just can't do that. I know you've just showed me some really amazing things, but you know, maybe you can turn a staff into a snake and my hand into leprosy, but I don't know that you could help me be able to be a good speaker. Isn't that incredible? Like, this is Moses, one of the greatest leaders in the Bible, everyone. Aren't you glad? Do you feel any sense of encouragement today that you and I aren't the only ones that think like this? 2 of you do? He says right there, look at it. He says right to him, I can't do this. And then look at what God says. Now God answers his question. Maybe God only answers the ones that are good. Because here's what he says. Then the Lord asked Moses, who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether people speak or don't speak? Hear or don't hear? See or don't see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say. You ready for this? Here comes the whole idea of part 4. Don't miss it. Make sure you get it. Take a picture of it. Imprint it in your heart and your mind right now. Here it comes. God isn't as interested in our ability as he is our availability. God's not as interested in our abilities, whether we can talk well, whether we can organize, whether we can lead, all of those things. He's not as interested in that as he is our availability. Just presenting ourselves before God, going, God, if you can use someone like me, I'm available. I say yes to you. I'm going to stop saying no, and I'm going to say yes to you, God. And I'm ready to do that, God. Yes, I want you to use me. Because here's the deal, everyone. God's bigger than our abilities. God is bigger than the handicaps that you have in your life. God is bigger than the things that you struggle with. He already knew that before he created you. What he's waiting for is for you and I to surrender our hearts and go, God, I'm available. And you know what is so amazing is I have watched time and time again, God use people in incredible ways that made themselves available to God. Whether they had challenges or issues or anything. I remember that was one of the things I struggled with the most. When God said, I want you to go, I'm like, number one, I don't even want to do it. Number two, I don't like to go talk in front of people. Up to that point, I know some of you are looking going, are you kidding me? No, there was a point in my life that wasn't the thing. I'm like, God, I can't. And how many people are using that excuse this morning? Here's the deal. If we're available, God will make us able. If we're available, God will make us able. And I love God because you'd think, okay, Moses has got it now. Look at verse 13. Then Moses again pleaded, Lord, please send someone else. God, send someone else. You got the wrong address, the wrong email. I'm not the guy. I'm not the woman. I'm not skilled. I've said no. I'm putting up the best fight I can saying no to you. Why aren't you taking me at my word? Is anybody glad that God pursues us in spite of us? Aren't you glad that God sees stuff in us that we don't see in ourselves? Aren't you glad that God doesn't quit on us? And he keeps pursuing Moses, keeps pursuing him, keeps pursuing him. Watch what happens. Then the Lord became angry with Moses. Here's the difference between the Lord's anger and our anger. Our anger many times is retaliatory. When we get angry, we want to hurt somebody back. God's anger is never in retaliation. It's always in correction. It's an adjustment. He doesn't just whip us to whip us. You get what I'm saying? Just so that you know that he's disappointed in you, that you should have said yes, so now I'm going to make your life miserable. That's not God, everybody. And if you think that way about God, you're missing the whole nature of God. That's not him. But what God will do is he will adjust, he will correct, he will keep pursuing you. And here's what he says. He says, all right, what about your brother, Aaron the Levite? I know he speaks well of you. And look, he's on his way to meet you right now. He'll be delighted to see you. Talk to him and put words in his mouth. I will be with both of you as you speak, and I will instruct you both in what to do. Aaron will be your spokesperson to the people. He will be your mouthpiece, and you will stand in the place of God for him, telling him what to say, and take your shepherd's staff with you. to use it to perform the miraculous signs that I have shown you. Okay, what is the one thing that finally broke Moses? What's the one thing that finally allowed Moses to stop saying no to God and yes to him and saying, I'm available? It's right here. And I believe for some of you, this is the one thing that is going to help you say, yes, God, I'm available. Whatever you want to do, I fully surrender to you. And here it is, everybody. It's real simple. You don't have to do what God is asking you to do alone. That's amazing. He never designed us to do life alone. We talk about it all the time here. But even when he asks you to do what he's asking you to do, he doesn't even expect you to do it alone. But he'll bring people alongside of you that will help you be everything that he created you to be. That's amazing. That finally broke Moses. He's like, all right, if my brother's coming with me, if my brother can be the mouthpiece, together we'll make a great team and we'll do whatever you want us to do. Moses and Aaron would go on from this point right now and lead the greatest freedom revolution the world has ever seen. The deliverance of the people. All because they came to this realization, I'm not designed to do this alone. I don't have to do it alone. So stand with me right where you're at, and the worship team is coming back out, and in just a moment your campus director is going to come back and just kind of help orchestrate the response to this message. But I want you to hear me today. I know people say this all the time. All I need is Jesus. Now, I'm going to push back a little on that. I don't believe that's true. And here's why I don't believe it's true. Because when Jesus went to the cross to accomplish the mission that his Father sent him to earth to do, did he go alone? He brought Peter, James, and John with him to that moment. I don't believe Jesus wanted to be alone. So he brought Peter, James, and John. So if Jesus wasn't good enough for Jesus, then who are we to think, you know what, I don't need anybody as long as I have Jesus? No, Jesus will be with you, but Jesus is also given the body of Christ, people, to help us be and accomplish everything that he wants us to be. And you know what? When we plug into that, our lives become so useful. I think about the amazing people that God has surrounded me with. This would never have been accomplished by me. God gave me an amazing life. God gave me Pastor Sean and Pastor Jim and Sue, amazing people that he surrounded me with. And you know what? I can't do what they do. In a lot of ways, they don't do what I do. But when we're linked together, we can do whatever God's asked us to do. That's the plan in the heart of God. So we're going to sing a song, and this is going to be our prayer. And then Brennan's going to come back. I'm available. And if you mean this today, like if you're ready to stop saying no to God and say yes to God, during this song, I want you to make this your prayer. I want you to make this your heartbeat. Say, God, I'm available. If you can use me, use me. And I believe that God will. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Kurt, for that word today. And you know, church, I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to find freedom. The Bible says that who the Son sets free is free indeed. And so if you need somebody to come alongside of you, to be praying for that freedom, to help you walk through that journey of life, then we are here for you. There are multiple ways on the screen right now that you can get in contact with us. And we want to see you find freedom. We want to walk this journey of faith with you. And so would you reach out to us today? Well, like every other week, I want to encourage you to go back, take a look at the other messages in this series, or catch the other series that are right there on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel. Go check those out, hit like, hit subscribe, hit share. Let's get this word out to the community and to the world around us. As always, you can find everything that is going on around here for you and your family right there at bridgewoodchurch.com/info. We have so much going on this fall that you are going to want to check out all that is there for you and your family. Well, until next week, we love you and we are praying for you this week.